Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing. My name is Trevor Blondeel. Spending 25 years in manufacturing, I discovered the real impact we have on turnover, communication, and the ability to manage change is how we show up. That's the essence of emotional intelligence. In each episode, we bring a guest or message to expand your skills, engage your people, and grow your organization. So let's jump in.
We started this podcast to be more mindful in manufacturing, but we all know that being productive in manufacturing is the bottom line. We just see mindfulness as a way to get there. But when I met my friend, Sarah Ohanesian, the productivity expert, I'm like, oh, well, that's a good fit for the podcast. She's a professional keynote speaker and a productivity consultant on this mission to fight burnout and increase happiness. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thanks so much, Trevor. Thanks for having me.
How do you become focused on this productivity? Did you struggle with it in the beginning? What's the story here, Sarah?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was a chief marketing officer in my past career. And what I kept seeing, it was almost as if everyone I talked to, and I said, "Hey, Trevor, how you doing?" "Oh, I'm busy."
Busy.
"Oh, hey, the next person, how you doing?" "Oh, I'm so busy. I can't keep up." It was just this pattern I kept seeing over and over again. And I thought, I love productivity. I love time management. It is a natural gift of mine. And I think that this is something that I can help other people with. So fast forward, I said to my husband, I have this crazy idea. What if I started a productivity company? And he was like, "What if you did?" And here we are. It really just came out of this need and this response to everyone I'm talking to is burned out, overwhelmed, stressed out, not having enough time with their family, not doing the things that they really enjoy with the people that they love. And life is too short. I lost both of my in-laws at younger ages, and they worked really hard until they passed. And I just felt like there's so much more to life than just working all the time. So my goal with my company is to help you be as efficient as you can be during the day so that you can leave work knowing you got enough of the right things done today. And you can go home and really be at peace and enjoy the time with the people that you love. So that's how it got started.
Funny because you and I haven't even talked about this, but when I ask people how they're doing, and I always say, the 4-letter word busy, because I'm like, oh, well, say more on that. Like, what do you mean busy? Because busy has nothing to do with productivity. And I think that's the actual opposite almost is busy. So when I hear someone say they're busy at work, it's almost a concern. Like, oh, really? Like
It can be. Yeah. And there's really two ways I think about busy. There's busy from a technically the schedule is full
okay.
perspective.
Yeah.
And then there's busy that's leading us to burnout.
Mm,
Not the same thing. So you can be a very busy person, meaning you have a full schedule, but is that work and what you're doing with the time that you have are the items on the calendar essentially filling you up or bringing you down and potentially leading you into a dangerous burnout zone? So busy can be a really tricky 4-letter
okay.
word for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe, I talk about using the curious mind, not the judgmental mind. And I probably get a little judgmental sometimes when I hear the word busy because it's got such a background for me on just not being productive, but it can be, right? Of like, what does busy look like to you? It's like, oh, well, I'm, got these focus time today where I'm writing a bit and then I'm just out on the shop floor and I'm just interacting with people. And then I got a couple meetings here. I'm like, well, okay, that's a good busy, back-to-back meetings. I don't even have time to eat lunch today. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think what's so critical is we talk about mindfulness here. I know that's a big part of your
Yes.
business and of your show is this mindfulness piece. And for me, when we're busy without being mindful on what we're doing and where we're going, that's when we're stuck in this busyness cycle and we're possibly trapped in this burnout busyness trap. Whereas when we have a busy schedule, but we are mindful of what we're working on and we know we're working on the right things that are progressing us forward, now we're being productive. And that's really, to me, I see busy on one side of the equation and productive on the other, opposite ends of the spectrum. Busy can lead us to burnout. Being productive means we're working on the right things for the season that we're in.
If you can shift your mindset on like, am I spending my time being productive? Am I intentional on what I'm going to do today? I'll work with clients sometimes in manufacturing. Maybe in your vehicle before you go in, write down one area that it's important for you to get done today and keep that in front of you. Because in manufacturing, we get in there, Sarah, and it's, well, we walk in and this machine's broken down and then something's mislabeled and then someone didn't show up. And it's like, what was important to me? I don't even know anymore.
Yeah. Well, one encouragement that I can offer your listeners is I like to actually do it as a cool down the afternoon before, potentially.
Okay.
And
Let's
here's
hear it.
why. Three things you want to work on tomorrow. So you do this as a cool down. So if you typically leave work at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, just take 15 minutes at the end of the day. I think of this like a cool down from a hard workout. So you ease out of the day, because when you talk about mindfulness, what happens to a lot of us, we've got 70 tabs open on the computer. Your spouse is calling, you got to get the kids from soccer. Let's go. You're late already. And you run out the door to your desk and leaving in chaos, essentially.
Yeah.
So trying to give yourself 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the day to cool down, close out those tabs, and really be mindful about how and what is the most important things that you can accomplish tomorrow and feel really good about it. The reason I like to do it the day before is, especially in manufacturing, by time 8 a.m. hits, that plan might already be derailed.
So true.
But when you have set that intention the day before, even, you go to sleep at night knowing, okay, I've got a plan. Now, when that one thing comes in that might go awry, you can still get two of those things done, or even one of those things done. But if you don't have a plan, that first phone call in the morning or that opening up your email first thing in the morning, that's where your attention and your energy is going to go. So just something to consider for people. Could you possibly do it the afternoon before you leave work?
I'm thinking maybe I need to do that, Sarah. Like just trying to put my calendar blocking in more time there. But when you're manufacturing, sometimes it's not as simple as that. But I do love the fact of, hey, if we can just sit down the night before, and I imagine there's probably some psychology around there too, right? Because you get to kind of almost sleep on that intention as opposed to when you first come in.
Yes.
Now you've kind of planted that seed. Okay, my intention is that I want to have 2 one-on-one conversations with 2 people on my team tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah. And the other thing that I really encourage people to do is to be realistic. And I think in manufacturing, this is actually even more important than other industries. What is realistic with what's on your calendar already tomorrow? So let's say you've got a big, I don't know exactly what your clients do. They have a big client and a big job coming in. The truck's coming, it's coming to the floor. They know that's happening tomorrow. That means that they have to adapt what else they can accomplish tomorrow. So it's all these puzzle pieces of realistically, what do we have going on? So my recommendation is thinking about, okay, we've got this big job coming in tomorrow, or we know this machine is going to be down tomorrow, or we know this machine is going to be getting repaired tomorrow. Realistically, what are the 3 things we can still do tomorrow, knowing the reality of our environment? That's setting us up for success based on the reality of tomorrow versus, I guess I'll see what happens. I'm just going to randomly pick these 3 things to work on. Doesn't work so well. So being realistic, especially in manufacturing, of what is possible for tomorrow. Like, how can I be successful for tomorrow?
Yeah. So when I look at how great I was as a manufacturing leader, I would sometimes just say, make it happen. Like terrible leadership advice or direction, right? Like it was like, I don't know, it all has to get done, Sarah. So just make it happen. And thinking that that's motivational, but that is actually what's going to push people to burnout.
Yeah.
But I didn't know any better. Where were you then?
And I see that a lot, is just do it better, do it faster, do more. Like more is not the answer. But when we're realistic about anticipation and capacity planning and managing workload, now we can actually have a conversation about what is the most productive use of our time tomorrow, the next day, next week. So there's some planning involved in this.
Right.
Gonna get another $6 latte and power through.
And that's where it can actually make us less productive. And I think that's really hard for us to understand because we are built on like, this shift is only as good as the safety and the quality and the productivity of this shift. But then if we can shift that a little bit to say, what is going on tomorrow?
Yep.
What are the top two, right? That maybe I'm going to put down here that say, this will save me time later. I will mentally feel good about myself if I get this done, because there's some feelings of like, it just makes you get down on yourself sometimes because you
Yeah.
leave the building thinking, man, like I didn't get half the stuff done I wanted to get done. And that doesn't make me motivated for tomorrow.
Exactly. You're leaving work feeling defeated, lacking motivation. Like I didn't get anything done today again. And seeing this long to-do list of things you didn't accomplish, where if you had that list of 3 and you got one of them done and you know that that thing was important, it automatically shifts that feeling of, oh, I'm actually feeling pretty successful and fulfilled. Like I got one big thing done today. That feels much different than there's 70 things on the list. I didn't get any of them done.
And sometimes our brains work well in a framework. So you got a framework around this. So help walk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I created a framework called COAT. And I COAT, and I think of COAT as this coat of armor. It's a one size fits all coat. It fits everybody. But it's this coat that protects us from this barrage of busyness that we're faced with. And a lot of times what I was seeing is someone says, can you help me with something? Or can we take on this new client? And we automatically say yes right away. So the C in COAT is to get clarity. And what I was seeing is just this immediate saying yes. And then we were off to the races on doing the work. So the opportunity to get that clarity is to just pause, just to take a moment and to say, what is it? And why does it matter? Every time something new crosses your plate. So Trevor, this could be as little as a small request that comes in from an email. This could be as big as, are we going to take on this new client? Pause to get that clarity on what is it? Like actually defining what this thing is and why does it matter? Why is this important for us to take on right now for our business, for our bottom line? That connection of why it matters, that's a big deal for your employees.
And just a pause, the power of that pause.
Yeah. So that's the C. Okay. The O is to organize. And this is going to look a little bit different at different companies. Do you have a system? Do you have a notebook? Do you have a digital tool that you use? The key is having one trusted location where you organize your work. And that's so you can just see everything in one spot and really know what's on your plate.
Yeah. I've seen a variety of that in manufacturing because I've seen for some people, it's the book, right? And they kind of write down their book and there's those endorphins of crossing it off your list.
Huge.
Kind of keeping that. And then obviously the electronic calendars, people are using that. If I come back to the office, I can kind of see it's on the board there. Okay. Those are the top 2. And then something else I've done, like personally, I'd have a gratitude journal. And then I do 3 areas I'm grateful for in the morning.
Love
and then
it.
something I'm intentional on.
Love it.
And truthfully, sometimes at noon, I got to go back, open up the journal that I wrote that morning and say, what was I unintentional on this morning?
Yeah.
Maybe I need to do it the night before so that it can soak in my brain more, Sarah.
But it's about having that location you can go to, because especially in manufacturing, you're oftentimes on your feet. You're moving around a floor. You might have to go on site somewhere. You might have to visit a client or a vendor. So having your stuff all over the place can be leaving you feeling very scattered. So organizing it into one spot where these are all the things I have to do. They live in that location. Then the A is for action. Act. Take that action. What are you going to do? And the act that I request is to physically get it on your calendar. So you're picking out those 3 things that you're going to work on tomorrow. And you're physically getting them on your calendar. 10 o'clock, I'm working on this. At 11 o'clock, I'm working on this. And that doesn't mean it's going to be perfect every day, but you are with intention, figuring out what is most important and taking action on it.
What I like about that is that if you put it on your calendar and then someone comes at you with another task, then you have to say no to what was important in order to say yes to that. I think that's brilliant, Sarah. Now it's forcing me to actually say, well, I'm not going to work on what was important. So if you kind of circle back to the clarify what and why, okay, so is that what and why more powerful than what I was going to work on? Now we kind of got, I can see how that model works. Now I could kind of have to make a decision. I can even make it a conversation with the person that's asking, saying, hey,
Correct.
I booked time to do this because I thought it was the most important action. And on the other side, it's like, okay, now we're in some dialogue and we're going to connect on this. And it's going to be, maybe it's just not now.
Exactly. This opportunity to pause, I've actually found that it gives people so much permission to do it. They're like, oh, I just thought because someone asked me to do something, I had to say yes. It's that you are in control and you're consciously making the best decision with the
Mm,
information you have. So that moment to pause and to say, am I doing this instead of this other thing? When you've got the clarity on why it matters, you can go back and say, oh yeah, that's tied to our top strategic goals. I
mm,
have to get that thing done. We've got a board meeting on Friday. Or you're right. That thing you just brought up to me, it is more important. Let me do that. But you're now consciously making the decision, which again, talk about being mindful. You're not in reaction mode anymore. Now you're in control of it. And you're saying, great. Thanks for asking, Trevor. I will take that item on, but you're doing it consciously and you're in
mhm.
control. And then you're just going to move that action to another time slot and it's fine. But that positioning of putting you in control of making that decision, it's a game changer for companies.
When I think of my most stressed out times running manufacturing plants was when I felt I had no control. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was just kind of like, I got to get this done. I got to go to this meeting. And I remember coaching a manufacturing leader, and he was in so many meetings that he just wasn't able to get to the shop floor.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not on the shop floor, making sure that this customer is being served and you're supporting the team, then what does everything else matter? And I think some more conversations with this framework would have been helpful.
Yeah. And even for more junior people on the team, it can feel like I don't want to push back. I don't want to ask my boss, why does it matter? But that's not the question. It's really about help me understand, or can we make a decision together to
Yes.
reprioritize? So at any level of an organization, you can use this framework because good bosses and most don't want their people feeling overwhelmed and overworked. But if we never say, like, I'm having a tough time prioritizing, I'm not sure what is
Mm-hmm.
the most important here for the good of the organization, most bosses are like, cool, let's have that conversation. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Thanks for asking. So I hope that this encourages people at all levels, if you're in leadership, to open up and share why it matters and what the priorities really should be. And then if you're more junior on the team, to not be shy to ask those questions, because I don't know how you decide what to work on next if you don't really know why it matters and what the priorities of the organization are. So it's a two-way conversation that I've just seen a ton of success with.
I love the frontline leadership. What a great tool just to say, create the conversation. Most, not all, but most bosses are going to be like, oh, okay, I'm glad you asked that. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's talk about that. Because
Mm-hmm.
I know I probably missed a lot by saying the Trevor saying of make it happen, which was not helpful because it didn't open up a room for a question. But even if there wasn't room, you could come back and say, hey, Trevor, I know you said make it happen, but can we talk about that? I think I would
Mm-hmm.
have said yes.
Yeah.
I wasn't
Yeah.
as mindful, but I wasn't a bad boss. I just wasn't very mindful and I was missing that. And sometimes that frontline leader is the one that can change the organization just by asking those questions.
Actually has the power to change a company culture around a conversation of what should we be working on next. I
I
love it.
love it.
So I'll share the T. So we've got clarify, organize, act, and then the T is to take time. And you already mentioned it. When we're running second shifts, third shifts, potentially working overtime around the clock, it can be something that feels like it's optional or a little bit nice to have. But if we don't take time to rest, to relax, to recharge, we're not going to be able to come to work and be as productive the next day. So it's really important to take that time. One thing the leadership team can do is to thank the team for
Mm,
the work that they do, show that gratitude. So it's about taking time quickly to say, great job, but then
hmm.
also giving people the evening off or the weekend off or some time off or vacation, like taking that time that people need, that actually makes them more productive the next day.
Yeah. And there's seasons of manufacturing that we can't do that. And there's times in manufacturing we make excuses on why we're not doing it, and we
Mhm.
could. And I think even though that person may be so important to you and this project's really important, if you're in this for a long game, you need to give them up for that week.
Leaders are some of the worst
Good point.
culprits of this.
Yeah. And giving yourself permission that, you
Yeah.
know what, I don't need to answer my phone in this time period because I'm going to show up better for my team next week.
Mhm.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So
Sarah,
that's quote.
I love the quote. We're going to put that in the show notes. What do you want? What do you want to leave the listeners with today?
Well, one thing I think that affects manufacturing so much is what I call the fires. And fires come in hot, they come in ferociously fast, they elevate our heart rates. And I say, you know, if you don't have a red truck, you should not be a fireman.
We feel it.
And I think in manufacturing, it's just so prevalent. Like things are on fire and we need it now. And so my wish is to just think about your processes, because a lot of times the fires, there are common themes. If you start to pay attention to the fires you're having, you will start to see patterns. And here's what I mean. That fire always starts at that same point in the process. That fire always starts with that same vendor or that same person. Like if you start to pay attention to the fires, there are some common themes that are going to show up. And again, this is not work you're going to accomplish tomorrow, but over time, seeing those patterns, and then what can you do about it to prevent the fires from happening? And I'm not saying all fires are going to be solved and you're never going to have a fire again. But I've done a lot of work in this space with large companies. And when they start to recognize those fires and see the patterns, they can be proactive. There's less fires overall, and there's less burn victims, certainly.
We just get used to being firefighters.
It's the normal.
We get so good at it. It becomes our normal. And then it becomes hard just to be able to take the time and the pause, like you said, and just prioritizing and being more productive, circling back to where we started on this episode. So Sarah, manufacturing conferences and companies need to hear from you. How and people just need to follow you. What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So SarahOhanesian.com. Do a lot of keynote speaking and corporate training. So would love to help any of the organizations or associations that you certainly associate with, Trevor, on their productivity journeys as well.
Right on. And I have seen Sarah speak. She is a rock star, and appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your message with our listeners.
Thank you.
Hey folks, appreciate you taking the time to join us today. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. Haven't subscribed yet? Do it now. Remember, if you want results, the key is increasing your awareness of how you show up.